I believe the expression goes, "Can't see the wood for the trees." People always ask, why are you a member of Labour? And as I always say, look, when you are part of a political party, you get to, put influence on the party. You get to put pressure. You get to, you know, do stuff within the party, and working within a political party is how you pretty much affect change. Otherwise, why, people who are against me on that, why are you going to go join your party then? But there are, again, left-wing groups in the Labour Party that are pushing for this, as I've said before. I'm part of Labour for PR because, again, I want PR. I want that, to happen. Once again, we've seen that very recently, that the policy, thing recently, PR dominated the agenda. You can't just keep saying, oh, but you're doing nothing. But there are numerous examples of where these groups have succeeded, have made changes, have done things. Look at the whole PIP thing. That was a pretty much a Labour left-wing rebellion in many respects. But oh no, there's no left in Labour, or whatever. But yeah, there are some very, I think, weird people with, I think, weird perspectives on politics, if I'm quite frankly honest. I'm not going to be afraid to say that, I think, anymore. But I just think it is, to be honest. This government has done some, very good things. It's also done things I disagree with. But that's politics. There is no such thing as a perfect political party. But anyway, we're going to go have a look at this because we're actually having a look at one of those groups, Compass, who is now getting back involved with the left wing of the Labour Party. Again, I know, shock horror, but there you go. So before we do get on into this, please do remember to click the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Of course, that there are links to my Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, you have the YouTube membership. I forgot about that was then YouTube membership down below. So let's crack on then into this, coming from the New Statesman, talking about Compass. So Compass is pointing back to Labour. So Compass began life back in 2003 as a grouping now of senior Labour Labour figures discontented with the direction of the government under then Prime Minister Tony Blair. They were somewhat grandiosely described in The Guardian at the time as a roll call of the intellectual heartland of New Labour. For the next 8 years, the organisation grew to be continued to concern itself primarily with the Labour Party, backing candidates for internal elections. Again, why you do it as well. Among their successful picks were, of course, future MP Sam Tarrant, elected chair of the Young Labour Youth with their endorsement back in 2009, and became a very significant hub for the soft left. In 2011, shortly after Ed Miliband unexpectedly won the race to lead the party in opposition, Compass, of course, made the decision to then broaden its focus, becoming a cross-party rather than Labour-specific organisation. This call followed a vote of members, but despite that mandate, there was now a subject of great discontent. Miliband was, of course, Compass's pick to be leader, and many felt the organisation was now junking its opportunity to wield meaningful internal heft. Again, very true. All this stuff, very, very true. You can do this if you are part of those groups, you help campaign, and you do that all stuff within the party. But again, I'm told apparently that's all impossible. You can't do that at all. But here it is. It happens all the time. I just think people deny just how much there is, and then effect there are, and groups there are within the Labour Party having that effect. And it comes from having heft of members in those groups behind that, campaigning for that thing. But anyway, let's continue on this. So, a significant portion, of course, of the organisation's youth thing that then resigned in protest, led by its now chair, MP Cat Smith. Another name, of course, is list of resignees with Ben Foley, who would then become the Corbynite Party Parliamentary Labour Party Secretary later in the decade. The resignees, of course, subsequently then set up the fairly short-lived new Next Generation Labour. Neil Lawson, who has always been at Compass's helm since the beginning, put it into a statement at the time that the organization remained committed to transforming Labour and knows that it is most likely if we are helping now to lead a broader progressive alliance. Compass and Lawson then defended opening up the decision now to this day, arguing that they foresaw the breakdown of the two-party system positioned against an organization accordingly. The call, however, has now been increasingly controversial. One, of course, with soft left activists deeming it now infuriatingly counterproductive decision that now vacated a space and deprived the soft left of a vital organization and resources now within the party. While Compass, again, wasn't entirely, of course, absent from the internal Labour scene for in the decade and a half that followed, its energies were, of course, largely then elsewhere, focusing then on cross-party campaigns on issues such as proportional representation and UBI. Particularly, of course, controversial within Labour was the decision then to advocate for a progressive alliance. Open Labour, founded, of course, back in 2015, took up some of that space it had left. Building, of course, a membership and a mailing list. Data is, of course, key in all these things, of course. The organisation was very complicated, often antagonistic relationship with Corbynism. However, it put it somewhere to the right of where Compass had been. While the likes of Tarry, who was then director of Corbyn 26 leadership team, and of course Smith, a former Corbyn aide, and as an MP, long-serving member of the shadow cabinet, immersed themselves into the left's leadership. As ever, its Corbyn-era height, Open Labour, however, had the organisational capacities in its teams and staffing resources that, of course, Compass did. And it had notably, of course, been quieter in the recent years, not having held an in-person conference since 2020. The internal, of course, climate in Starmerism has, of course, been very chilly for both the left and the soft left, and is often compared unfavourably to the more permissive attitude taken by the new Labour government, and indeed the party in opposition before 1997. In this atmosphere of now tightly controlled sections and now tightly controlled whips, of low approval ratings and pursuance of policies like the two-child benefit cap, which are now nearly universally detested by Labour members, the soft left and the left are now moving closer together. Again, I love it that people tell me that the left doesn't exist in the Labour Party. But again, here's proof that it does. Once again, Open Labour figures that I've spoken to, of course, stressed, of course, differences between the party's organizational policy paper and the policies that Momentum, of course, out there have. In recent years, they've often been fairly minimal, while Momentum figures, of course, discuss working with the soft left as a necessity, not a luxury, in this internal economy. Neither organizations do, however, of course, is now particularly well placed now to facilitate jointly working. Open Labour, of course, can't offer in much of the way of organizational capacity, while Momentum has, of course, greater staffing and resource capabilities. For some terming themselves soft left, who perhaps remember the left-back candidates pushing for long-term NEC members and Black off the executive, among other Corbyn-era skirmishers, they are now, and of course, then with the ascending group. Momentum's, of course, brand is at least tainted. Momentum that then, of course, exists now. However, it is quite different. Despite some efforts to now change its constitution in regard, it remains a Labour-aligned grouping. You must, of course, be a party member to join it. And after Sultana's announcement of the new party and its chairs sent a mass mail to all members urging them to stay in Labour, it is essentially almost everyone who is going to go has already gone already, is now either out of the party or is directionless dissatisfaction with Starmer, or now into the ranks of the Polanski hopefuls or the Greens or the now new Corbyn party. Those who, of course, remain after all this generally described in the past few years are now more likely to be committed Labourists than the average Momentum member when Starmer became leader. The original idea of this organization was to form a hub so that such work, some think Compass, which began, of course, with the soft left hub in the noughties, has now become long-maintained linked with figures like former Momentum National Coordinator Laura Park, the SGG Clive Lewis, who shares a staffer with Compass, following out the suspension of 4 Rebel MPs just before the summer recess. Compass and Open Labour and Momentum released then a joint petition condemning that decision. but is, of course, just one part of the noticeable reorientation towards Labour that Compass has now undertaken in recent months. Its conference, which of course took place in London back in May, showcased both a renewed commitment to the party and the stalls of various Labour figures, notably, of course, Andy Burnham and Louise Haigh, who have been criticising the government now from the left. Lawson and other Compass representatives have now been speaking out to CLPs, that's the local Labour parties, of course, all about their works and now taking their members' concerns. Not everyone, of course, agrees that Compass is particularly well placed or even welcome to work in this space again. The one soft left operative describe themselves now as far from convinced that Compass has either the political reach with the now very large parliamentary Labour Party or is now an established reputation now within the wider Labour movement. That meaningful organisation requires. Loyalty is, of course, gold dust for the moment, they added. And that May will have a long memory for Compass's wilderness years. Another person in that space struck a very similar tone, saying that they wouldn't seek to deal with Compass given its history, and it isn't organizationally felt that they can trust. So even then, there's people that disagree internally with the direction that Compass is now going for this. Which again is fine, but they've now got to rebuild trust within the Labour Party. That's their decision. They've got to sort of rebuild that and do that. But Compass has been doing a lot of stuff, cross-party for years, and we've talked about some of the stuff they've done previous channel as well. But it's now, as they are now again going back towards Labour, because again I think they can see that there is space to work there. There are other left-wing groups that they can work with. Why not? So beyond, of course, likely more statements like the one put out, of course, post suspensions, what Compass's pivot back towards the party will specifically involve is, of course, unclear. As its recent statements in support of electoral pacts at the next election show, the organisation is no way abandoning now its progressive alliance tendencies. They will, of course, be setting up some kind of ring-fenced Labour grouping to try and allow its cross-party to work to continue without getting on the wrong side of the membership rules. Some say they are no doubt now particularly acutely cautious following, of course, the investigation now of Lawson's membership for tweeting now in support of other parties' candidates. But from what form that will take is, of course, yet unclear. No one I spoke to in either Compass or Momentum would rule out a joint slate or even some other form of cooperation. These groups are now co-sponsoring 2 motions in the conference in September, both on public stewardship of water and tackling child poverty. But the response have now ranged from somewhat coy insistence that it's still too early to think about it, and the elections to the NEC run at least on 2-year cycles, with the last ones were held in 2024. Internal youth elections are also expected to go ahead next year, to now coyer assertions that there is still nothing is, of course, off the table. Whether its relationship with one another and organizations ultimately end up being, it is very clear that some 14 years after Compass turned from internal Labour politics, it is now, of course, key to turn back. So that will be interesting to see what impact Compass is going to have on, the internal party. Will it be able to sort of make those deep inroads? Will it be able to work with groups like Momentum? Will they be able to look at those and rebuild those bridges and sort of fences? Again, we wait to see what happens, but make no mistake, as I've been saying and advocating before, look, if you are in the Labour Party, there are groups and things you can join where you can add your voice to. Like I say, Momentum still exists. And I would actually be interested in speaking. In fact, I might actually try and reach out to someone from Momentum, because I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. But as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.